Well, maybe I suggest to just start with a little round,
Okay.
so
That's
everybody
good.
knows who everybody is. You want to start, Pete?
Yeah, Peter Luscuere, professor at this faculty. And we encourage this cradle to cradle lab. Michael Browncourt has participated in it quite some time, back with Mulhall. Now in virtual form, but last time we found out that it worked quite well, so we'll continue it. And next time we'll try and see whether we can stream it live on internet.
Michiel Kulik. I'm studying architectural engineering, graduating, and I'm working on the Happy Healthy School project, which involves greenhouses which combines greenhouses and buildings.
I'm Marleen Lodder. I'm a PhD student at the Cradle to Cradle chair in Rotterdam and Drift in Rotterdam too, Erasmus University. My topic is Cradle to Cradle and area development.
My name is Bert van Stam. I'm student assistant here at Climate Design and Architecture. I'm there working on quality base, database, and I'm here for taking the minutes also.
Yeah.
That I had trouble hearing.
Okay, shall I turn it around?
No, just speak a little louder.
Okay.
Maybe it's good that you explain a little bit for the students, mainly what the quality base entails, right?
Yeah, the quality base is you can call it a super database, a database of databases with descriptions with qualitative information on existing databases on products and materials which are related or inspired by Cradle to Cradle or Cradle to Cradle.
I'd just like to ask a question about the quality base. I'm sorry for interrupting, but it's quite important. Our people at EPA in Hamburg actually were really surprised to hear that this is actually happening. And I'm wondering if you could make a note to contact our chairman, Jörn Konke, as well as our program director, Rachel Clayton, and inform them that this beta version is up and running, because I think it will actually be quite relevant for the people at EPA.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we offer them a subscription for a friendly price?
Yeah, sure, try it.
What were the names, Douglas?
It's Jörn Konke and Rachel Clayton, so Platin, and Konke is K-O-N-K-E, Konke.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can just send me an email, I can send you their email contact.
Okay.
But it's very important because we want to get this out there, and also the Cradle to Cradle Center and the C2C Expo Lab, of course, on one side are part of it. But have you actually informed them that this thing is up and running?
Okay. Bert, have you sent an email to Douglas? Yeah?
Yeah.
With a little bit of the content.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What, and then?
And then Douglas can forward it to...
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah? Okay, I will continue because Koen is eating at the moment. So I can't speak. My name is Bob Geldermans. I work here at the Faculty of Architecture for the section of Climate Design and Sustainability. And I'm coordinator of this Cradle to Cradle Lab. And we've been doing this for a year and a half now, I'd say. So, yeah, that's it for now.
My name is Gert Jan from Berg, working at this university in the Valorization Center, and I'm interested in the topic.
Okay, my name is Lara Smits. I'm a bachelor student here at the Faculty of Architecture. I'm almost finishing my bachelor this year, at the end of the year. So, yeah, not so far yet.
And we'll hear all about your fascination in your presentation soon.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Roald Piera, master student industrial design engineering, IPD, so product design, and I'm graduating at the moment at Van Ganswinkel, who is has a permanent partnership to some extent with the EPEA organization, and next to that I'm participating in Nature Inspired Design, which is a consortium from the TU, led by my chair, who is also a teacher at IDE.
Who's the professor you're associated with?
Erik Tempelman.
My name is Kai van Tolk. I'm an integrated product design student at the Faculty of Industrial Design Engineering. I'm currently graduating at OC, a big printing company, and I'm going to tell something about my project today, and hopefully you can give me some recommendations, maybe new insights. It would be very nice.
And again, the same question. Who's your professor or associate with?
It's Ruud van Heur.
Ruud van Heur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kai is actually also in the Nature Inspired Design consortium. So it's
Nice.
8 companies that are working together to see how profiting actually biodiversity or cradle to cradle or biomimicry could be in real life projects. So there are 8 projects running at bigger companies to see how that functions in real life.
Okay. And that
Doug,
was
are you aware of this nature inspired activity?
No. Is it Netherlands focused or European?
Primarily Netherlands.
And you were referring to biomimicry, but you also said cradle to cradle. Was that specific or just being polite to travelers?
No. There's actually we have 2 teacher assistant, they're PhD students. One of them has a focus on cradle to cradle, and one of them has a focus on biomimicry. And within the 8, there's a split of 4 that have a focus on biomimicry and 4 that have a focus on cradle to cradle.
And what is the intended output?
Well, it's a 3-year or 4-year project. It's running now for approximately a year because it's rather hard to get bigger companies to participate and be open in their projects. So it's confidential in several ways, but we'll be presenting some feedback. We're actually graduating at 2 of the companies within this consortium. And the outcome will be a platform that can help bigger companies concretely in integrating either cradle to cradle or biomimicry or any other tool that has a nature-inspired design feeling into their projects. So that from start off there's going to be a focus on this.
Is Ingrid Pauw also connected?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're developing a platform to help companies integrate cradle to cradle into their work.
We're working with a wiki at the moment with these companies, so that from all the information there is on these topics, they can easily make a workshop for their for a working group. And within this tool there is of course all the information about the 2 bigger streams, so biomimicry and cradle to cradle, to help them get a more concrete understanding about the topics, because what has been noticed is that it's sometimes hard to get an overview because there's so much information.
And, well, you're right. And who has trained the people that are giving these workshops in cradle to cradle?
Well, I know that, for example, the PhD student has been to cradle to cradle workshops of you, so.
It's maybe for clarification. I think that's Ingrid Pauw and Douglas knows that.
Yeah, Ingrid Pauw is also one of the leading professors in the project. It's just that the one officially leading it is Erik Tempelman, but Ingrid Pauw is there, and then you have Bram van der Grinten is the one for cradle to cradle, and Ernst Jan Mulhall is the one for biomimicry.
Could you email just the the information on the people and just a little background?
Yeah, no problem.
Bram van Gitten is my.
Yeah, and Bram is here regularly, Douglas, in the Cradle to Cradle Lab sessions. And I've Ingrid as well.
She presented
But
last.
we haven't heard about this before, have we?
No, well, I haven't.
No.
If
Okay.
you haven't, then
No, if
we
you could
have.
just email me a little background information, because there's a lot of people giving companies workshops on Cradle to Cradle these days.
Well, it's not about giving them workshops about Cradle to Cradle. I mean,
Research project.
it's a research project. For example, Van Gansewinkel has a regular partnership with Cradle to Cradle, and they follow the workshops you provide, and they will still be doing that. It's just that for some project managers and the people working under them, it's easy to get an overview. So it's not about giving workshops, but I'll email some information and contacts.
Good, wonderful.
Okay. So Suzanne has joined us as well.
Yeah, is that the camera?
That's the
And
screen.
that.
That's huge.
Yeah, feels like a product.
You want to introduce yourself, Suzanne?
Oh, yes. I am Suzanne van Dijk. Many of you know me already, I guess, but I see some non-familiar faces. I am doing a PhD on closing cycles in the built environment, on material, energy and water. And hopefully I will be finishing my PhD somewhere by the end of December. At least not have my defense, but finish my thesis. And in meanwhile I will be having a baby. So lots of work to do coming year. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, well I used to be an architect before I started doing my PhD, so that's kind of the reason why I wanted to do this PhD, is to get to see how sustainability could be incorporated in the design process better than it's not incorporated now. So.
Okay, thank you. And Koen?
Suzanne, if you're finishing in December, have you ever contacted the LTF group of Stephen Beckers?
No.
Oh, you should definitely do that, because I think you could be a real asset to this. It's basically a network of experts.
I'll take care of that, Doug.
Colonel Peter is one of them, and Peter can background you on that. But I think it would be very nice to have you as part of that network.
Oh. Yeah, well I'm always into joining networks in which I can contribute. So
No,
thanks.
this is a consulting network, so I'm saying there's possible work in it for you.
Oh, well, that's even better. Yeah, thanks, Douglas. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
I will talk to Peter about it.
Yeah, please do. It's important.
Yeah.
LTF is
Lateral Thinking Factory. It's 3 persons. Stephen Beckers is a trained architect. He has done beautiful projects, very interesting, including water cleaning type of biological water cleaning type of
quite a lot in
projects.
Brussels, I think.
In Brussels,
Yeah.
yeah. He's located in Brussels, and we are planning actually. Well, Doug, is there already a date for the Skype in preparation of the next LTF meeting?
No.
Okay.
So, but I'll come to that in a second.
Okay.
Okay, let's proceed then. Koen, you did.
Yeah, shortly. I'm student assistant for both with climate design and sustainability, and also Kees van der Linden and Andy van Dobbelsteen at building technology in general. So I'm trying to record this. Only one question. Please don't click your pen or something like that, because you cannot hear the voices anymore. But thanks for thinking about that.
Don't put too much pressure on us.
Yeah.
Okay, about this filming, we are trying to make it a live stream, but that didn't work for this session, simply because it couldn't be arranged with College Rama, and it's also hugely expensive. So we're going to find ways to do that, but for now we found like an intermediate solution, and Koen is going to record it and then edit it and put it online afterwards. Okay, so let's start with the presentations. We have 3 students today, which I think is very nice because the last couple of times.
Bob, wait a minute. I just wanted to say a few words about the invisible bee, and I don't know if you can see me.
Oh,
Yes.
you didn't
Yes.
introduce
No,
yourself.
no, no,
yet.
no, no.
Oh,
We
sorry,
skipped
Doc.
it.
Sorry, Doc. Many apologies. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Douglas Mulhall. I'm representing the academic chair for Cradle to Cradle Innovation and Quality at the Rotterdam School of Management. I'm an associate researcher with Peter's division at TU Delft, and also most recently have joined the Cradle to Cradle fellowship at the Technical University of Munich. With my other hat, I'm a project developer with EPEA in Hamburg, Germany, which is the founding scientific organization for Cradle to Cradle since the 1990s. And I work with front-runner organizations on developing Cradle to Cradle. And in the area of architecture, I'm presently working with several municipalities who are organizing area developments according to Cradle to Cradle principles. I also just wanted to announce, as I did provisionally at the last lab, that sometime next week, the planning guide for innovation tools in Cradle to Cradle inspired developments will be published. Marleen is helping us a little bit with that to put it up on the website of the Registry of Cradle to Cradle inspired elements at RSM. And this, from the remarks we received from the reviewers, it fills a big gap in the need for information about what types of application tools you use to implement Cradle to Cradle in the built environment, including financial tools. Michiel, I just wanted to flag for you that we have, it looks like a project with the city of Brussels and is related to the Happy Healthy School. I'd like you to talk to Peter about that briefly and just to give him updates and to see if there's any way that your experience might be plugged into that.
All right, nice.
Which one in Brussels do you mean, Doug? Because there are a couple of them now.
Basically, it's a project on urban greenhouses.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Douglas. So
Leaving my video because I have a bandwidth problem here, so goodbye.
Okay.
let's start. Okay. 3 students today.
Yeah.
Pretty nice project. Cake. It's of Kai. It is.
Yeah. Kai, cake, Kai.
Go over it.
Okay, so I have to introduce myself, so we'll skip this slide. Well, I'm going to talk about my project, my graduation project that I'm currently participating in right now. It is a big printing system manufacturer in Venlo, so I had to travel 2 hours today to get here. But it's about this packaging. It's an ink cartridge, and it's very complicated, with a very practical subject where I can adapt cradle to cradle to. So, but I will talk about my analysis about the OCA facilities in Venlo, my own vision, first ideas that I have for a new cartridge design, and afterwards there will be some room for questions and a little discussion about electronics in cradle to cradle, how that can be combined, and also about possible materials for my project. So this is the printing system. It's for the professional market, and it's basically meant for office environments such as a design studio or architect studio where line drawings have to be printed. And this is the cartridge. And the current version of the cartridge isn't properly designed when it comes to end of life. or usability. So I'm thinking of new ways of reusing the cartridge or recycling it, looking in technocyclic solutions or maybe biocyclic solutions. So what I did is just analyzing the current design. Current design has 24 components, which is quite a lot. A lot of different materials, all combined together. So not only plastics, but also metals and adhesives and labeling and a lot of things.
What is HIPS?
HIPS, high impact polystyrene. So all are variations of polystyrene, but also nylon is involved, and steel, PVC, polypropylene. So a lot of different materials into one product means problems, of course. If you look at C2C theories. So
is that a battery?
No, it's
The round
this
thing.
one.
Yeah.
This is a chip.
Okay.
This chip contains data about the ink, and well, basically the printing system needs this information to make higher quality prints. So I analyzed the use context of this product, as a designer should do, and what basically was the outcome was that people don't know what to do with the packaging when it reaches its end of life. So when the packaging becomes empty, no ink is in there anymore, people don't know what to do with it, because the packaging looks quite expensive. It's a high quality packaging, and you just have to throw it away in the bin, and it feels awkward when you're doing that. So that is one of the problems right now. But also, it doesn't fit in current waste streams that well. So there's room for opportunity. So basically, how customers feel right now is quite bad, because they don't know what to do with it. They feel kind of stupid, basically, and guilty that they don't contribute to a better environment. So basically what I want to do is make it more clear, not only for customers, but also waste managers and
Do you have any idea, during the lifetime of the printer, how many cartridges are used?
It really depends on the kind of customer.
But can you give
On
an average? Is it hundreds or is it thousands or
Every
tens
year?
of thousands?
It's
An average
it's hard to-
architectural firm with 10 people, for example.
yeah, it's hard to say, but I think it's in the
They're looking
hundreds.
hard.
No,
Yeah.
per year.
Yeah.
And the lifetime of the printer will be 5 years?
5 years, but it's quite a good design, well designed, so
It can last longer.
lasts for 15 years. Yeah. So for this project, a lot of requirements are involved. Company requirements, but also other requirements, creative requirements that I integrated into the project. But also very technical requirements, such as it should be shock resistant, impact resistant, it should protect the ink from compressing, all those kind of things. It should be stackable. It's actually quite a complex design project, but that makes it challenging. So this is the current life cycle context of the product. It's manufactured in China and transported 20,000 kilometers to the Netherlands, to Venlo, where it's filled with ink. This is the ink basically. It's a solid ink. It's quite nice. It's a bit different than liquid ink, of course.
Is it transported by boat or plane?
Both.
Well, that's why the 20,000.
And what the main advantage of this ink is that you don't have that much bad emissions. So it's much more healthier than other liquid inks.
During printing? Or
Yeah, during printing. It melts and
You say much more healthy, but it's much less
Yeah.
Toxic.
True. Sorry. Less toxic than other inks. But it is.
Sorry, I have a question on
Yeah. Sure.
Is it the same inks that are used in laser printers?
No.
So it's not the same. Because the laser.
Sorry?
You fall away, Doug.
I don't hear you.
No. Doug?
Your
No.
connection is bad.
Yeah, it's gone.
You're back again?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. So what is the difference between this solid ink and the solid ink that laser printers use?
Okay, I'm not an expert in inks, to be honest. But basically how this works is that it's melted in some kind of small printhead kettle. And well, it's a very complex process, but it is injected onto the paper. And I don't know much about the technical details because I'm mainly focusing on the packaging of the ink and not on the working of the ink itself. So
Okay, well,
yeah.
I'm mentioning this because you have to be careful not to compartmentalize too much. It's kind of like doing a cradle-to-cradle electric chair.
Yeah.
In the sense that if you have to look at the safety record of the inks being used, because one of the biggest concerns from a cradle-to-cradle viewpoint is nanoparticles from solid printer inks in offices, which really create a serious health threat.
Yep.
So if you're doing, I'm not, because I don't know this particular solid ink, but definitely is a problem with laser printer.
Yeah.
And so it's something that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And to find out what the actual situation is and how how many particles are released into the office.
Yeah.
And if yes, you're going to have some isolation requirements. So I just like to flag that as a very large concern.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's quite hard to find out how much particles are emitted into the air, and basically I just have to do with the ink specialist at OC, and they tell me that it's much more healthy or less toxic than other types of ink. So
I can give you a name at OC of somebody who is very into particle counting and clean technology. It's Koen Kegel.
But also on the positive side, if they're making that type of claim, then they have a marketing claim that puts them ahead of laser printers. So if it is as they are verbally claiming to you, then that's important as well. So it's not a negative thing necessarily, but you have to have data. And if they're making this claim to you, then they must have the data somewhere, and it should be transparent.
yeah, well, I have a list of all the components that are involved, but I'm not an expert in those kind of materials, so I know what's inside the ink. But yeah, it's hard to discuss it with other people because it's certified as well.
I'm sorry, it's what?
Certified. So Classified. Sorry, it's classified.
Well,
so yeah.
Is it classified when it goes into people's lungs? No, it's a serious question because this is where you really need transparency in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And it's a big issue these days with indoor air quality, especially when architects are using these things so extensively. And the other thing is in terms of real volumes, on the question of how often the cartridges are replaced.
Yeah.
The volume of ink that goes through that packaging is probably in the area of 10 to 20 times the volume of the plastics and other materials that go into the packaging.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, they claim it to be not that toxic. So
But that's something that you should address, but not necessarily solve in your project.
Because that's the interesting thing about this project. Those kind of products exist, and of course you can neglect it. But I think, like a car, is also current solutions are not very well. They have a lot of emissions as well, but you can also look at some parts of the car that can be
sure,
improved.
but
Yeah.
what is important, I think, and maybe that's also the statement that Douglas makes, is that you look at the system. You don't want to make a cradle-to-cradle packaging for a little bomb.
No, that's true.
You know,
No.
you have to address it at least.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And you could ask, although the materials are classified, or at least the ingredient list is classified, you could hand them over the list of the X list or the band list and ask them, are one of these materials in the ink? So you could exclude it or say, well, at least these should be excluded from the ink, at least for the ink. So they don't have to give away everything about the material that's used in this ink, but they can say something about if something is in there or not.
Yeah,
and then make them aware of the toxic elements in the ink.
Okay,
that's true.
I think you should continue,
Yeah.
otherwise we take too long.
But it's a good point.
Yeah.
And, what I wanted to visualize with this visual is all the streams that are involved in the total life cycle context. So you have emissions at the ink factory, but also in China at the cartridge manufacturer, but also at clients, and finally also in the waste management. It's gone again? No, it's still there. So more on a product level, I did a life cycle analysis of to find out where opportunities are and what the highest environmental impact has, what part of the product. And basically, what I found out is that the amount of materials and the amount of processes has the highest environmental impact, and not that much the transport or the current end of life situation. But it doesn't mean that it's not important. Well, what I did was looking at current waste streams at OC. So they have a quite nice facility over there. It's called asset recovery and remanufacturing. So they refurbish printing systems or parts of printing systems and put it into new machines, sell it again over and over. But they also separate all kinds of waste, and like plastics, metals, electronics. And I found it interesting to find possible sources for new components. So maybe they have a lot of unused plastics that could be maybe recycled in some way for a new product. So this is my vision, of course. It's very cradle to cradle. But all the loops are in some way controlled. So materials can return to OC and can be reused over and over again. Well, let's continue. These are just some of the first ideas that I have. The product right now is a very complex product. There's a lot of functionality in it, like containing the ink is one of them, but also separating the little balls, ink balls, into the printing system. That's this part. It's very high quality, and it can be used much more times than it's used right now. So after its lifetime, it's still in perfect condition, basically. So I'm thinking of how to reuse this packaging multiple times. So thinking of refill solutions or separating. Yeah.
Sorry, I lost the video, so I'm just asking a question here. When you say the packaging, are you referring to the actual cartridge or the packaging that's around the cartridge?
Both. Yeah, I just call it packaging because cartridge already means something. Packaging is broader, so I'm currently in my idea generation phase, and I don't want to stick to current solutions. I want to have really a new, innovative idea. So that's why I call it packaging.
But for now, you want to use elements from the cartridge, the current cartridge, in your own packaging.
Well, that's one of the directions.
Yeah, yeah.
So
what you're referring now for Douglas is that there are elements in the current cartridge that you could reuse.
Yeah, reuse
as a whole, without remelting.
Yeah, but it's more about the functionality separation. So this part can change, like I have it here, into a new principle. This is a spindle, but it could also be a little wheel maybe, or another elevating mechanism. That is more, what is simplified and can be made out of just one material instead of 3 materials.
Is this spindle 3 material?
Well, no, the whole mechanism, so even more. But, so you have this high impact polystyrene, nylon, you have a magnet. So it's quite a complex part of the product. So one of the things that you can do as a designer is simplifying it. So starting with just one material and thinking about how could components of the cartridge change or be designed that it's still functional, or integrating components, eliminating some components, or using, for instance, gravity instead of elevating purpose. You could also think of elimination of, for instance, this blister, which protects the cartridge that fits inside it. And what happens then? Well, you get new stackability problems. So you could look at current natural solutions of stacking, like the spinal column of a human body. How does it stack those components? It changes its shape, and it's an interesting way, I think, of looking at design. You could also think of solutions that are much smarter than nowadays. So providing data to the customer of how much ink they use, when they could order new ink. It could contain data for waste managers of how to recycle this product, what kind of materials are inside. So a new way of thinking, new technology. Well, this is my last slide. It's my first direction. It's a technocyclic way of looking at this product. So thinking of ways how it could be reused multiple times at the customer. Well, maybe I can start with where it should start, at Jose, factory of Jose. So I think the China factories should be next to the vendor factory. I think it's possible. In that way you can control much more the material input, so the raw materials that are ordered, because that's one of the problems when you're producing in China. You don't always have to have the ability to control the materials that are supplied to the factory. So you want to have it in your own country next to the design office, basically. Well, when it's transported to the customer, well, it's used, the packaging becomes empty, and there you have the problem of what to do with it. Well, I'm thinking of...
Okay, just a couple of things here.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of, and I'm not going to go in order, but you might want to just make a note of this.
Yeah.
You know, Amazon has a worldwide collection system for stuff that they've been using for, I don't know, like 20 years, where they get stuff back all the time. So in terms of customers not knowing what to Enterprise for Economics in 1993. So we're very familiar with OTSE. And they very proudly came to us I don't know, 5 years ago and showed us how they'd optimized their photocopiers, but they forgot to optimize the paper, which is the biggest flow.
Yeah.
They got the wrong thing perfectly right. And that's one of the reasons why we entered into a partnership with companies like OTSE and Van Gazenwinkel to develop recycled office paper.
Yeah.
And so that was getting the right thing perfectly right, and that stuff is now on the market today.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
major problem here is that OTSE doesn't want people to refill them because they're worried that they'll lose their market. And the solution to that is a leasing concept,
Yeah.
where OTSE leases sheets of 10,000 sheets of printing instead of selling ink cartridges.
Yeah.
And that way, as part of customer lease agreement, you get an Amazon type return where the stuff just goes automatically back to OTSE, and then there's no incentive whatsoever for the user to go and cheat and use other refillable cartridges because they have a lease agreement with OTSE. So it's very important to stand back and look at the economic structure because you need to create the economic enabling conditions in order to do your redesign.
Yeah.
The first place to focus is the SIP group at OTSE at a very high say, look, this is really silly that we're not refilling these things because we're worried about black market stuff. Leasing concept and turn it into a business plan instead of doing it this way. And then you'll open up all types of interest in the company to make sure that when they get these back, the thing is recyclable at the same level of quality, reusable as long as possible, etc., etc. So it's very important, and this is where designers get all upset because they say, well, I'm not a financial person, I'm a designer. But if you apply that to architecture, and Peter will tell you this, architecture is going out of business in large volumes right now because if they only stick to architecture, people are buying architecture plans off the shelf and they don't care anymore about architects. So architects and designers have got to find new business models to present to their clients, and in order to do that, they really have to find new business models as well. And in this case, the leasing business model would help to solve a lot of your problems.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Doug?
Yeah.
One moment, please, because you are understandable, but you are breaking up once in a while. So
Right.
if it's getting worse, we'll have to reconnect.
Okay. So did anybody not understand what
No, it was understandable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that black, that's the major point. We could get into other things, but that's your major stumbling block.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Okay.
Why do you need a cartridge? This ink is, you could fill it like a coffee machine.
Yeah, could be. That's one way of thinking. Yeah.
Pollution of the pebbles. That's one of the main reasons. The point is that it's the technology of the printing head is patented because it's a new technology that uses these pellets, but if there's dust in the printing head, that's actually the most expensive part of the entire printer.
Yeah.
So if dusts accumulate in that, you have to get the printer out of there, and that's kind of the wrong direction. So that's the reason why it's packaged this way, is that there's no possibility of dust getting into your printer heads. So that's the reason why you don't have like giant tea bags of pellets just thrown into the printer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the requirements of this project.
I can imagine if you do something like this leasing construction, that they would eventually come up with some sort of system which is portable, which can be refilled, like airtight or whatever, without having the need of these smaller cartridges, having like if the quality is so high, the cartridge would probably last, as you said, much longer than the ink.
Yeah, well, this requirement was in the beginning of the design project 5 years ago. When the printing system was released, this was a huge problem. They have improved this, so it's not that sensitive anymore for dust. So that's why it's interesting to think of refilling options.
Yeah.
Doug, I've got one other question. Are you still working with OC?
You know, Hans Winkel and OC and IPEA have had these long conversations with OC, and when OC was bought by Canon, you know, we thought that something more might happen, but I don't know what the status is here. All I can tell you is that now that Canon is involved, you really have an opportunity to have a globalized leasing and take-back system. And, you know, for example, Canon might want to partner with Amazon. And there's a group at Amazon, there's a consultant at Amazon who runs their whole take-back program. And you can do it that way so that you can have a third party managing the return, the reverse logistics. And it's something that, you know, they might not have even thought of. But to be clear, Amazon has a reverse logistics program for millions and millions and millions of products. And they could easily offer the same type of service to Canon if they, you know, don't have something in place to take the cartridges back. But the only incentive that they'll have to do that is if they're reusing the cartridges, because if they just have a cost to recycle this really complex cartridge, it's not going to work for them. Yeah. So they're not going to bother paying anybody to redesign the cartridge for recycling so it can go off to some waste management company. It's only going to be in their interests if it's in their interests.
Yeah, that's obvious. But I was asking it for a different question. It's interesting to see that we are talking about the redesign of a specific part of a printer, and if we are talking about health effects, then we're talking not so much about the components, but the way how the ink might be polluting the indoor environment. And if we're talking about different possibilities, then we come up with business models, which is perfectly right. But if I'm thinking about OC, then something occurs to me like Kodak, who did not in time perceive the development of digital storage. So what is the position of OC with regard to this one? Do you have any ideas on that?
Do you mean, sorry Peter.
Well, OC is going to be obsolete because there's going to be less and less printing, absolutely. So if they are not going into one or another business direction different than just printing, then they will have a problem.
But my understanding is that this is largely for, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it just came through in the introduction, this is for really large-scale architectural drawings, am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not only that, also the graphic arts market, so banners.
Yeah, so that's probably going to be one of the last markets to go totally digital. I think it will happen as these screens get larger, but Peter, do you know what's happening in the industry? I mean, there's a lot of designers in the room. Can anybody tell me if more and more as screens get larger, they're actually not printing this stuff anymore? Or what's the trend?
You really see a decrease in printing. I mean, 10 years ago, everybody would have stacks of drawings on his desk, and now it's going to be less and less and less.
The 1D printing, 3D printing.
Yeah,
it's becoming quite large.
That's right. But nevertheless, I was just curious because are we talking about the right problem in this respect?
I tell you, it's a very good point that you bring up, and I tell you the answer to that. The answer is 3D printing. What's happening right now in the marketplace, and I'm sure that OC is acutely aware of this, but it comes back to the leasing concept. If you look at the automotive industry, a lot of car parts
Nobody volunteers.
No,
Exactly. So should I explain it?
No.
everyone knows actually.
If you can explain how you can 3D print an apple, then that would be interesting.
More and more complex parts with complex materials are being printed, and basically it's the same as the technology you're looking at right here, except it uses polymers, and it uses computer-assisted design and all of that. So the business model for OTC here is 3D printing. It's not continuing doing this, and the question is whether or not the Pearl technology that you see here could also be applied to polymers, because there's a very serious problem with some of the polymers that they're using for 3D printing. They're using PVC, if you can imagine, soft PVC, which is the most toxic, ugly stuff you can possibly imagine. And people are using it in their bedrooms, to print little objects. These 3D printers are now becoming, they're less than €1,000, and people are, taking them home. And so the open door for Canon to walk through, and I bet you they're already doing it in some ways, is to transform this technology into 3D printing of objects. That's really where the future is. And in that case, then the leasing concept becomes very important, because in that case you're talking about what is the feedstock, and all of these things. So and it's going to make much more sense for companies to lease these printers to people than to sell them. There's no question about it, because the technology becomes outdated in a few years, and so the machines have to be designed to be taken back, disassembled, and updated. So that's a very good point you brought up, Peter, and I would bring it up with OTC, and I would ask the question, because you're right, we're looking at the past, not the future.
Okay.
So if you really want to get into the big flows of materials and the big machines that are in all the automotive companies now and going into people's houses and everything else, it is 3D printing. And so the business model might be to ask, can this same thing be applied to 3D printing?
Okay. So thank you very much. Kay, is there anything you would like to ask? Because we are giving you more problems than solutions. I think.
Well, as a designer, you're getting used to it, so I know the more problems, the better.
Is there anything we can help you with? Is there anything that you would like to have some feedback on in addition to what we told?
No, maybe. It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Maybe more on the product level, not the system level, because I know all those problems, and the future about printing is also a bit weak, maybe, or it's going to change a lot. But for my project, it's 5 months, so I just have to look at a redesign of current printing systems. So I can think of new printing systems, of course, about eliminating maybe the whole cartridge concept. But for now, it's not my focus. It's too big. Yeah.
But I think one shouldn't necessarily exclude the other.
No,
Because
no.
if you take that lease take-back concept in consideration, what you design now for the current situation might just be one stage,
Yeah.
but can be upscaled and can be more generic for the method of that OC uses.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a leasing system as well. So you have here,
Yeah.
OC reverse logistics that take back all the cartridges that they have sold to their customers.
Well, I can give you some input on the actual product, but I just would like to emphasize, it's no point for us to have students saying, well, that's all very nice, but what you're telling me is not very useful because I just have a 5-month project and I'm only designing this. The whole purpose of this lab is to redesign the design process.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
it's important for you as a student working on this to push companies like OTC to say, well, what am I doing here? I'm doing this 5-month project to redesign something that's going to be obsolete in a few years.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's what I've tried basically, but
yeah.
it's really hard.
So on the cartridge itself, there's a couple of things. The first thing is the foil looks like it's printed on the top. So the question is, what is it printed with? Do they print it with the same ink that they use in their own process, or
No.
What?
No.
No?
No, it's produced somewhere else. So.
Okay, well then they should talk to Googler about making sure that at least the inks are compatible with biological processes. And Googler, after we worked with companies for about 20 years, last year announced a complete cradle-to-cradle printing system.
Yeah.
So that's so that you're just not throwing away all this toxic ink on the cover all the time.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you're doing a lot of things right. In terms of design for disassembly, making fewer materials more flexible for more uses. That's absolutely the right way to go. No question about it. And the third thing is being able to pop out the electronics.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that, then you're doing the right thing. At that level,
Yeah.
the right thing.
Okay.
Examples like Philips, where they have succeeded, and you can give the example to OTSE, where Philips has succeeded in extracting and recycling the plastic from their Senseo coffee machines and using it in other Philips products at the competitive price with virgin plastic, but actually a higher quality.
Yeah, I know that example.
Yeah, and Philips did that with Van Winkle. It's a beautiful, elegant case to show them that they can do that. But again, they're probably not interested in it because of this restriction on, why did we get the stuff back when actually we're not using it?
Well, they had a very nice example of the old DVD covers that are unused after the initial lifetime. And there was quite a lot of it, so they could use it for other components. So that's why I also looked at current waste that is available at OTSE. But you really have to have a high flow of materials. And that's a bit problematic for a high volume produced cartridge.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
They're looking at it and they're saying, in total, the volume of these cartridges is nothing compared to the volume of the inks.
Yeah.
It's a very small flow, and there's no way that a company like OTSE should be expected to be the recycler for this. The most important thing is reuse, and then after it is no longer usable, find a way to get it over to Remondis or Veolia or Van Gansenwinkel, and then they take care of it from there. And OTSE could, Van Gansenwinkel has offered a partnership with OTSE for quite some time, and I don't know the status of that. But you are exactly correct. The volumes are too small. So until they find another solution or partner, you're going to have something that really doesn't work. So you'll have a nice design at the end, but you won't have a system around it. And so it's important for you to say that to them.
Yep.
Okay, we have to break it up here, time-wise, unless there are very urgent questions from the group. No, nothing? Okay, then thanks, Kay. Well, I hope it was useful.
Yeah, very useful.
Let's go to the next presentation, Lara.
Ctrl-L, mazzel.
Okay. Good luck.
Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. I wanted to give a short introduction about myself, but I already did, maybe for Suzanne. I'm Lara Smits, and I'm a bachelor student at this Faculty of Architecture at the TU Delft. And I would like to tell something about a project that I did last September. This is going to be my first presentation in English, so I hope I can make myself understandable. Please let me know if things are not good to follow. I would like to tell you something about a bachelor project. It was only a 5-week project, so it's not really, it was basically a concept project. But afterwards I will give a short introduction about the goal of my design, like how I see it, and then about the assignment of this project, so what we as students were told to design. And then I will continue by telling something about my design, the Breathing Green Pavilion, something about my fascination and goal during this project, about the design process, and finally about the solution that I found, my design project. I would like to start telling you that I don't see my design as something that is already finished. I've only worked on it, like I said, for 5 weeks, so it's basically not much more than a concept that might turn into something as a good design. But I see it now more as that I want to inspire people, and I want to trigger people to start thinking in a different way. That's also why I wrote an article about it. I was asked by my professor to write something about my work so that other people would read about it and maybe start thinking in a different way.
That was, by the way, the reason why we asked you, because I saw your article and I was really interested. So
Thank
that's
you.
why we asked you.
Okay, thank you. That's nice to you. Well, then about this project, we were asked to design a small building, or as we call it in architectural terms, a pavilion. We had to choose a fascination. This could be anything like an animal or something that you found really interesting. And it had to be something that would inspire you during your design process. Beside this fascination, there was a location given where the pavilion should be built, which I can show you here. This is the city of Rotterdam, and then you have the laser. Does it work?
So yeah, it's the middle button.
Okay. You have here, this is a harbor area in the city center. On the next slide you see it better. And our location was this part of the harbor area, the Merwevierhavens. As you can see here, it's an area where many industrial companies are based. They store and fabricate some products here. But once the Tweede Maasvlakte will be finished, a lot of those companies will move there. So this area will be abandoned, and it's gonna be a creepy place where nobody wants to be if we won't come up with a new function for this area. So it's a really urban designed problem to redevelop this area. And we had, in another project, we had to think about this might be a nice place to build some houses mixed with education facilities or cultural facilities. That's all possible, but our design had to be built inside this building. It's called the Katoenveen. It's built in 1920 and used for the storage of cotton. But now it's a monumental building, and we were asked to design our pavilion inside this Katoenveen. The roof and the facades should be removed, and only the construction should be remained. As you can see here, it's like a grid of concrete columns and beams. Well, so far about the, as you can see here, the construction. So that was the assignment, so the fascination and this location. And for the rest, besides those 2 points, we were totally free to design whatever we want. So that brings us to my design, which you can see here. This is a model that I built. I'll will first tell you something about my fascination. I did some literature research during this project, and I read about environmental problems in this area, the harbor area in the city center of Rotterdam. There's like the soil and the air are both contain a lot of pollution substances caused by those industrial companies that are based here. So basically a lot of work has to be done before this area can be used for other functions than industry. The soil has to be decontaminated before other buildings can build here, and well, the air quality is just not good enough now at the moment to build houses there. So especially the air pollution really worried me, because yeah, well, we breathe in air every day, like 10,000 liters of air a day. So I suppose that will certainly, if the quality is not good enough, will have effect on our health. Before I came to Delft, I've been a professional classical ballet dancer, and in that time I have already experienced how important it is to breathe in good air, because during our training, if it wasn't, you know, good air, the quality was not good, you started to feel dizzy, you had problems with breathing, and well, it can be really nasty. So for this project, I choose air pollution as my fascination. So I wanted to design a building that can clean the air, and not only for its own use, but also for the whole surroundings. So I saw it like a building that breathes in dirty air and kinds of, like gives back to its surroundings cleaned air, or in a better quality. But besides that, I also wanted the building to be an experience for the visitors, so that the visitors would, experience this cleaning process, and that the building would contribute at the awareness of people, like the awareness that we have to do something about it. And that brought me to this concept, and I'm sorry the text is in Dutch, but it's my original drawing. This is the first drawing that I made, and I kind of visualized the pavilion that I wanted to design as a small island in a surrounding with like the dirty air, and then I want to use a big part of my building for this cleaning process of the air, and then this part could get another function where the clean air finally ends up, and then it will continue to its surroundings. So the building like a filter for its surroundings, that was my my concept. Let me see. Yes, that brings us to my design process. So I started to think about how can a building clean the air. Of course, there are climate installations that are used at the moment. They have filters, they clean the air, but I wanted to look outside the box, and I wanted to look at nature, because nature has always fascinated me, and I'm amazed how it works, such a smart processes, and how everything keeps each other in balance. So I think we can learn a lot from nature, and as you all probably know, it's already used more and more in biomimicry. You just said, yeah, it's also used more and more in architecture. So to observe nature and use as our example. Well, as you all know, plants are responsible for the clean air in nature. So that brought me to this idea of the living wall. It's an idea that you can, well, it's more and more used as well inside buildings as a nice wall decoration, or on the facade on the outside of the building. But here you see like in offices or even in living rooms. But the plants are now mainly used for decoration. So, oh yeah, sorry, I have to tell something about the way it's built. You have different ways that these living walls can be constructed, but it's all the same principle. They have like a framework of steel where the panels are fixed with the growing medium, and then you need some system to give water and nutrients to the plants. So sorry, that will be later. So, but now the plants are mainly as a decoration. They give a nice touch to a building. They have some positive side effects, of course, like in big cities. They can help reduce the air temperature because the plants absorb some of the sun heat. The plants also, of course, have a positive influence on the air quality. They can moisten and clean the air. And experiments prove that the presence of plants have a positive effect on the mental well-being of people. But for these living walls, these are now side effects, and the ability of plants to really clean the air isn't the goal, isn't effectively used. It's not the purpose of the living wall to clean air. So I thought, why not? Plants can use carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. They can filter out some of the ozone and nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. So then I read in an experiment that also the roots of plants can filter some of these pollution substances. So that has something to do with bacteria and small animals that live in some symbiosis with these roots. So I thought that's really interesting. Maybe I can use this for the building. And then I started to think about how can I use the living wall and also use like the roots of the plants for this filter process. So here you see one of my first conceptual drawings. It's what I was thinking that you have like, here is the living wall, and the air is sucked into the facade and then pressed through the living wall, and then it will also, it will not only get in touch here with like the leaves, but also when it's pressed through, it will pass by the roots. So that's what I had in mind for my building. And here you see more detail. It's very faint, but so then I started to think about, okay, how can I design this? I thought about like a ventilator, something that would suck in the air, and then a box in the facade. So there will be overpressure here in this box. The box is totally closed, except on this side there will be holes in the box. So the air is pressed through the holes and will be pressed through the living wall. And then you have here the porous system, porous material where the roots grow in, and the air will be filtered and finally comes in this part of the building, and plants can also do a bit of their job. So here I thought about maybe some rainwater system can make sure that the plants get their water and nutrients, and the solar cells can give the energy for this ventilation system that has to be ventilator that has to suck up the air. And then I have to tell also that there is needed some spiral that warms up the air, because the air cannot be below 0 degrees. So if the air outside is below 0 degrees, then it has to be warmed up a little bit. Otherwise, the roots cannot handle the cold air. So that's what I had in mind. I have here a picture of a conceptual model that I made. You see here, this is the box, and with the holes in it on this side, and here you have the living wall, and this is the outside facade. So that's, oh, this is really, yeah, I found these images 2 days ago when I was working on my presentation. And it's actually, it's a bit the same principle. It's only in a way smaller version, and it's the other way around. It works the other way around. But you have here the ventilator, and the air is sucked into this bowl, and then it reaches the plant, and it gets sucked into this area where it also reaches the roots, and then finally it comes out here as cleaner than it was before. So, well, it's comparable to my idea, but then in a smaller version. Well, that brings us to my design, my final design, which you can see over here. This is the construction of the Katoenveen building, and here is the pavilion that I designed. Here you see it from the side view, and this is the floor plan. I will walk you through it. Here is the main entrance. People walk up the stairs, and they walk all the way through this corridor to this room over here. And I had in mind this would be something like a dance studio, something for sports, with a changing room. So, well, as you can see, this is like a very long corridor, which normally is not really useful in architecture. But that was exactly what I wanted it to be. This is a greenhouse where the plants grow, and on this next, here you see, like here all the way is the living wall. So what I wanted is that people come in here and they have like an experience, this connection with all this green inside here, and that they would kind of experience it as this is the cleaning process, and finally you will notice the air quality in here is really good. So here is a section of the building. It's a section through this part here. You can see that this is the box inside the facade. Here's the living wall and the greenhouse with some other plants. And this is the corridor. And here you have the dance studio. So here the arrows are like how the people experience the green process here. So they come in, and because of the curved form, when you look straight, you will always see the green. So that's why I chose this curved form. And finally, when they come up here, they still, because these are also glass, this is a glass wall, and these are glass, so they still keep in touch with this green. And this is how I saw it, like the 3 areas. Here the air still contains a lot of pollutions, and then this is the cleaning area, and here you finally come into the area with the clean room. And here you see the airflow. I didn't use, I made some calculations, and it wasn't necessary to use the whole living wall for sucking up the air. So I only used this part between the black marks. The rest is also a living wall, but then the roots are not used. So only this part is used for, how you say it, like cleaning, yes. So that's what happens here. The air comes from outside, and then it's cleaned, and finally, if necessary, it will be warmed up a bit before it reaches the room. here I have a detail that I drew. It's a detail, it's a horizontal detail. Actually, it's a detail of this model that I also made. Yeah, like what you see here. So this horizontal detail is also seen here. Here you see the box with the holes on this side, and this is the living wall with the porous material where the plants grow in. And you have here the anchors, which make sure the porous material is fixed on these L-shaped profiles. And well, this is like outside, inside, and here you have the outside facade. On this image you see a vertical detail. This is the roof, and here you have the outside facade. Here again you see the box with the holes in it, and the living wall with the plants. Well, that was my presentation.
Okay.
So thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And compliments for your presentation as a bachelor student.
Thank you.
In impeccable English as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
I definitely have one, but perhaps we'll give the honor to Berg.
No.
This is the right project in the right place at the right time.
That's nice to hear.
Well, I lived in Rotterdam for 4 years, and I developed some real problems that I had never had before in that city. And I can tell you that in the port, it is the biggest single problem. You've exactly picked the right issue. I have a couple of very quick observations, and I am hoping that Suzanne is going to be able to run along with me, because there's just to telescope back for a moment. What the C2C lab tries to do is to encourage students to continue, instead of saying, oh, that was a nice little project and now I'm moving on to something else. That's why we have the quality base. That's why we have Michiel Kulik sitting in the room with the Happy Healthy School project to turn these things into business models. And this is definitely a potential business model. So a couple of things. First, the Andrea model that you showed there with the little plastic ventilator, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's David Edwards. He has a science art lab in Paris. David Edwards is the guy that invented nano sprays for asthmatics and other delivering medicines, and made about 10 million euro on it. And that's what inspired him to actually think about this invention that you're looking at. So it is a very nice model, and that was developed as a result of collaboration with us. So we're quite familiar with it. It is a nice model. But there's a couple of things that you have done that are quite exciting. The first thing is, it looks nice, which is, it's very important to make things beautiful in cradle to cradle. And instead of just having a wall, you've actually turned it into this nice spiral model that I think, and the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it also serving as a stairwell? Is that correct? Stairway.
Stairway.
Well, partly, not the whole corridor, but a part of it on the beginning is stairway, and I had in mind it would go a little bit up further, but not as a stair, but more as a slope. Yes.
Okay, because it appeared to me as though this might also be used as a stairway from the first floor to the second, or something like that.
Yeah, could be.
And then you'd have a really beautiful, functional stairway instead of these really ugly, awful, dark stairways that you normally get in buildings. Please talk to Michiel Kulik, because this is exactly what he's working on with the Happy Healthy Schools in another way, and he can give you a lot of background information on the investigations that he has done into filtration of air coming out of schools that his project has to clean up. And so he can background you on, for example, from zero floor that captures a lot of these particulates and nitrous oxides. I don't know if you've heard of that, but Michiel can background on it. The potential application that I see for you is with Desso, combining it with their air cleaning carpets. And you might want to approach Desso and ask them to introduce this at their circle of architects. Desso has a circle of architects that they use to develop their products, and every 4 or 5 months they have a meeting of the circle of architects. And I think this is something that might play very well with that, and you might be able to turn it into a modular business offering for different types of buildings in partnership with Desso. So make it modular and make it replicable and scalable.
So who should we address within Desso at this moment?
What I would do is I would ask Ulrika Niesman, who is the APEA contact for Desso.
Ulrika?
It's not, I wouldn't go through their sustainability department for this, I would go through their design department. Because this is really a design question, and how you can put together the Air Master and Sound Master carpets with this thing to offer a joint commercial offering.
Ulrika is based in Eindhoven, yes?
Actually, Ulrika's in Bonn, but you can easily reach her on email, and I can give you her contact. But I think she would be the best person to tell you, because Ulrika's also a designer in some ways, so she'll understand it.
Perhaps.
What was her last name?
Niesman, Ulrika Niesman. Just send me an email, and I'll send you her email.
Perhaps an interesting thing that within the consortium of nature-inspired design, Desso is one of the partners, as is Philips. So the 4 companies that came around, as in, oh, these are interesting, are all 4 of the participating partners within the consortium. So perhaps there's room there, because as far as I know, Desso does not have a linked student yet, and everybody is optimistic in this regard.
Yeah, that's because Desso's overloaded. And so this might be a nice solution for them. And then also, maybe you could have her make a presentation to the group on this, because I think that this would fit in quite nicely with some of the stuff that you're doing. This could be a really nice solution for kindergartens and schools, for clean air schools as well. Yes. Desso has been involved in the clean air school in Volwijk, and there are other schools as well. But again, Michiel Kulik is your contact on that, because he's quite familiar with all of these different projects. The other place where you might look at displaying the model is in the Venlo City Hall, which the old City Hall is there now. The new one is under construction. They have a green facade that is focused on exactly what we're doing on cleaning the air. And so you might be able to display it in the main lobby of the City Hall at Venlo as an inspirational example. So that's another possibility. Also, Venlo is looking at how to implement these types of things in 70 other buildings that it is planning over the next 10 years. So that would be an interesting business proposition for you. The other thing is that Venlo has entered into an agreement with the city of, with TU Eindhoven for a more sophisticated method of testing air quality. And this might be combined nicely with what you're doing here. The guy to talk to on that is Han Gouvert, who is the chief architect for Venlo City Hall. And the other guy to talk to is Michel Wires, who is the Venlo project manager for the City Hall. So those are two that you can contact. So it's really a great project. The question is how to optimize it, but you've got basics there. It's attractive, it's in the right place, which is Rotterdam, and the port of Rotterdam has got a green group coming together that never, they've basically been together for the last 2 or 3 years. They started with Shell, and their reputation got so bad that they had to change their name. And and then now other people are leaving the group because they're not doing anything. They're just talking. This is something that actually they might be able to use and to replicate in other parts of the port. So you might think of approaching that group. I'm sorry, I just don't remember the name right now, but I'm sure you can find it out. So it's really a nice piece of work.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. There's one question I had. You were referring to the fact that you did not use the total area, which was obviously available, and that you did that based on some calculations. Can you say something about that?
Yes, if you you don't want that there is like wind rushing through your building, so you have a certain amount of air that can be allowed into your building,
Okay.
and otherwise it will be too much. And
But not calculations on the
air cleaning capability. I was
the
thinking
purification
about that.
capacities of the.
oh no,
No.
it was based on the use,
Yeah.
how many people would use the room, so how much like wind would be allowed in
Okay.
the room.
I think Michiel could help you there as well.
Yeah.
I think with the calculations of your
It would
purification.
be amazing if you actually had some numbers on the air filtration rates.
Well, it's been 5 weeks program.
But then when you have more surface for the same volume, then the speed slows down, right? So why can't you then just...
Yeah, no, but if I show, yeah, like the air would finally only go into the room by this part, so there's only a certain speed that the air can have there at that moment.
Okay, but you
But could you,
could change that as well.
Yeah, of course.
because you have zoning in this building, I was wondering, because the first image that I saw, your first sketch that was in Dutch,
Yes.
gave me the
Oh,
suggestion,
concept?
yeah, that you wanted to give something to Rotterdam as well,
Yes.
instead of not just the building, but also to the surroundings of the building.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could maybe use the entire facade and clean the
And
air,
then
and then
directly.
exhale
Yeah.
a large part apparently of the air, and then the air you need, you can push it into the dancing room.
Yeah, that's a good option.
Yeah.
Perhaps a person to researching this would be Ken Young. I think most architects would know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
He's not specifically looking at facades as being a filtration system, but more as a kind of biodiversity within cities and connecting these patches of green through buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, I think, one of the world's leading architects in this regard.
Mhm.
I know he has a connection with the TU because he speaks here from time
I've
to time.
seen him on a lecture, yes. Okay, I will. Yeah.
And then there's Giancarlo, who's doing
Yeah,
stuff on the
that's a
roof.
PhD within my group who's doing exactly the research on the influence of green in buildings on perception and on performance of people.
Okay.
So there's Giancarlo Mongo, so you might want to speak to him as well.
There's one other company that might be able to help you, and Michiel, you can tell me if you've already talked to them. It's called Shift, S-H-F-T. Michiel, have you spoken with these guys?
Yeah, I've spoken to them a couple of months ago.
Okay, well, perhaps you can tell her about it.
Yeah.
It's basically a company that built a exterior air cleaning facility on the top of the Tilburg Library. Michiel, did you go to see it yet?
Yes, yeah, we went there.
And what did you find?
It was pretty cool. They've done a lot of research on the airflows around buildings as well, which is quite important. And well, it was obvious that it was working because you could see in the, like beneath the trees, there was actually a lot of fine dust collected, which rained off the plants. So it was pretty cool to see.
Well, that is a very important piece of information because this is a very important project that they're doing on the roof of the Tilburg Library with these plants that are exactly collecting particulates. And you might be able to partner with them and show them this, and again, consider it as a joint offering to the marketplace. might have data that you can use. So I would definitely follow that up.
Okay.
Well, that's quite an overload of input.
And names.
But and names, but I'm sure that after the session that we can get all the names right. And
But
get you in
also
contact.
Marleen is familiar with a lot of these, and she's sitting in the room,
Yeah.
so she
I
can
also
give you
like
the
to
contact.
additional-
She can actually give you the contact to IPEA and these people that I've mentioned.
Okay.
Okay.
Marleen?
I also have two additional questions, and maybe they're also a bit in the line of the last remark of Douglas and Michiel. First thing I saw with the rainwater, you wanted to use that for watering the plant, but I also saw this possibility there for also cleaning the water. Maybe did you consider that, or?
Well, I've talked about that with my professor then, Leo de Ruijser, but it was a bit too much for me at the moment
I
to.
understand. But
put
maybe
in the
keep it in
project.
mind when
Yeah.
all those business opportunities come up that you
That's-
also take that in. Yeah, like it's also your idea and you didn't work it out yet, but it's included.
Okay, thank you.
And in your detailing, did you also consider design for disassembly, so that this pavilion, for instance, could be transported to another place to clean the air there? Or?
No, I haven't talked about that. It was really like for this location meant now at the moment, so it might work if it would be transportable.
Yeah, but also because I think this pavilion has also an intended use period, and this Merivierhaven area especially is like a development area with a long-term plan, and maybe some in this building it will be has to be dislocated or transported to another place. Or but design for disassembly is also like a huge aspect of cradle to cradle, so it could also be a point to for a bit of attention.
Well, I think for further research,
Yeah.
there's a lot of information
Yeah.
there, and you have to look at the whole system and include that as well. Well, it's quite clear that you should not abandon this project, and you have your topic for your masters. So we want to see you back
I would like to
here.
actually ask that you come back in 6 months and tell us what happened.
Yeah.
And also, just a short suggestion, put your name on the presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So who you are, we know where to find you.
Thanks.
One more question.
I really like the idea of the biofilter and the earth, the soil thing, which is very important. And I have a contact for you that's researching that in the Westland, not so far away from here, Edward van Rijn, and he's looking at designing pots that, according to his first test, were like 10 or 20 times more effective in filtering the air. And next to that, I have a lot of other information.
You meet us later, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, that was it time-wise.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So let's go to the third and final presentation for today. Roald.
Marleen, I don't have any video, and I don't have the third presentation.
No, Roald didn't send it beforehand.
Do you have it now? Can you email it to me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just a video network.
So that's a surprise.
He doesn't have the
Douglas?
presentation.
No, but
Could
that's
we
I think
add
in Skype.
video
Oh.
to?
Yeah. Maybe it was because of the bad connection. We can try it again.
No, I can see now, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it went off because of the bad connection.
No.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So, small introduction. Industrial design engineering, basically already talked about this a bit, about the fact that industrial design engineering is about production processes, materials, and engineering. There's a part of ergonomics, design, of course, and for me specifically, a large focus on sustainability. Myself, I'm as you can see, a hard worker, student assistant. I've taught some courses at the faculty as well as a teacher. And my focus point within my study is mostly the detailing part, sustainability, and system design. So I don't like to focus particularly on a product or a surface, but the combination between the two, because I think that for a successful product or a successful surface, you need both. So basically within the project, and this is for EcoSmart. What is EcoSmart? EcoSmart is a daughter company of Van Ganswinkel. Van Ganswinkel is one of Northern Europe's biggest collectors of trash, and they have a strong connection to Cradle to Cradle. They work with, as stated here, the slogan, "There is no such thing as waste." And for me, for some years now, waste is actually a very interesting field because people are paying to give resources away. So this is something we see more and more, is that trash is not something we don't want, it's actually a resource stream, and that's becoming more interesting over the years because there's a decrease in available resources. So EcoSmart is a daughter company of Van Ganswinkel who specifically specializes in managing the resource streams, I'll call them now, in buildings. For that they have several products and a service. So this is kind of made for me, this project, so to speak. So the last years they had two major breakthroughs within their products. That's the Smart Bin and version 2.0. It's actually the first cradle-to-cradle certified trash collection system. It's not fully because there's steel in there and steel cannot yet be fully recycled because there's an input of some virgin material for the structural engineering. But as far as it can go, it's fully recycled material. It's produced to be fully recycled at end of life. It's a modular system, as stated, cradle-to-cradle certified, and it's focused on decentralized working spaces. So cubicles and such, to a maximum of around 6 working spaces. The second one is the so-called Tulip. This is a product that is very successful because of its prominent design. It kind of gets the trash out of its corner, as in it can't be seen, it's a waste stream, it's something that people do not want to touch. This is something you actually put in the middle of your office. It's a support of the new way of working, so the social aspect of recycling, this being aware of what you produce and how you can put that into a resource stream rather than a trash stream. It's a modular system, can be customized. That's something that apparently most businesses want these days, and it's for the new. So it's called tuinenstructuur. I don't know if I can translate that directly into English, but it's kind of the workspaces where up to 30 people sit in one room with desks. So these are the two products they brought the last 3 years that are quite successful, but they're looking for something new. And this is also within the consortium of Nature Inspired Design that they contacted me, and I'm now working for them as the designer for this new product. So the initial idea of a resource collection system is that there are several stakeholders, and all these stakeholders of course have different needs. One of the few things that they said is, for example, we want a piece of modularity. The system needs to be implemented in different offices, and for example, if you would place it at OC, it's very important that they can have a lot of paper, because OC works with a lot of paper, but in another office it should be another waste stream. Cradle to Cradle is one of their strong wishes. The price, of course, it's a market that is quite competitive at the moment, and the problem for EcoSmart is that these products will be connected to their service, and their service is a location worker that helps the people in the offices to separate these resource streams. The problem here is that if you make a product and sell it next to the surface, an office can say, oh, that's a nice product, we'll take the product, but we'll have our own cleaning. And what you get then is that the cleaner will just empty it in another bin that defines the purpose, and you have one waste stream again. So there's a couple of interesting fields to work out. So the case is then to make a modular resource collection system designed to ensure optimal functionality to all stakeholders, and that's something new, because up until now it was either, okay, we need to focus on cradle to cradle and forget about all the rest, which is of course very nice for cradle to cradle, but the functionality kind of went down from there. And the other one was we need prominent design and forget about the rest. So we need to take into account all stakeholders, and of course within this cradle to cradle is one of the main stakeholders, but not the only one.
Actually, I just have to interrupt you for a moment.
Yeah.
Involving all stakeholders is a basic principle of cradle to cradle and has been recommended to EcoSmart. I will come back to that later.
Yeah, when I talk to the people at EcoSmart, they do say they can improve a bit on that. But up until now, the feel I get from the company, it's a really nice company, but they don't have any integrated designers. There's marketing, there's the resource collection, but nobody connects these different points to one integrated system or service.
That is absolutely correct.
So this needs to be done on a product and service level, and this piece of modularity on the different locations as well is within that. So do we need to combine the smart bin and the tulip? No, that's not what we're doing, or what I'm going to do. It's learning from these two cases to come to a new principle within the resource collection system. So I'm not as far as the two prior speakers were. I'm still in the analysis phase, and one of the things I picked out to show is that in a creative session with the 6 responsible or head of EcoSmart people from all different departments, to get them out of this, okay, so I'm in marketing, what's your criteria? Oh, it needs to be cheap. Yes, okay, I know it needs to be cheap, but what further? And it was very nice to see that when putting them in each other's shoes, so in different roles, actually a lot of other criteria came forward, and this more as of combined package of list of requirements came forward. So I did a state your intentions to see, okay, so what is your combined view? And within this, the thing I thought was really nice is the fact that they say they want a showpiece. It's a kind of a jewel. This product, in combination with the service, needs to be a showpiece of your company. So it's something that implies a jewel, that it's of value for you. It's something that keeps its value throughout its lifetime. And it's something you're proud of, so it can be seen. And some other things was that EcoSmart is actually now not in the market as being a company. I mean, they function quite well, but they don't communicate it. There's no logo, nothing on their products, and the location workers that actually help wear the clothing of EcoSmart, which is also Cradle to Cradle certified, and it's recycled materials, but they don't communicate it. So I think there's a great opportunity there to actually communicate to the surroundings what they're doing, and thus your surrounding will participate in what they're doing. Yeah, so this was kind of the analysis phase. It's the main issue here. It's not supposed to be yet another bin. It's not a bucket under somebody's desks and okay, we want to separate, so it's going to be 6 different buckets. It's something that should work quite well in this service they're providing now. And that's a really big issue, because if you look at the numbers, they're very successful. For example, within Schiphol had a waste stream. Well, if you look at the fractions, like 100% of the waste stream, then 65% of that was rest waste stream, which is incinerated. That's something you can't do anything with. And they reduced that with the service of EcoSmart to 19%, and the rest is now a resource input again. So if you look at these numbers, it's actually a really big market, only there's an opportunity to actually involve more stakeholders and make a complete service that functions better. So within the product is this user friendliness. For the main user, in my opinion, is the location employee, and they keep forgetting this one. This is the person that has to work with this product on a daily basis and communicate the service as well as the user. So it's not the boss that's going to buy the bin and never look at it again. It's 2 completely different people that are the key issue to make a success out of this project. Then of course material and the production, and they already have some experience because they have a Cradle-to-Cradle certified collection system now. Then the service, so it's about the quality of the service, and with this you need some communication and transparency. This is really important, and they're not doing it now, which is kind of in conflict with a piece of invisibility. And with invisibility, I mean people don't want to see their trash, but on the other hand, you do want to see what you accomplish with separating and with the service that is provided, and a piece of uniqueness, because, and this is actually something I hope everybody can agree on, if you just sell your product and that's it, it's very nice, but it doesn't accomplish anything. And with the Smart Bin, they actually don't do that, but the Tulip they sell separately. What happens is that, what I said is they collect it in the end by some cleaner who has no idea what he's doing, and you have one waste stream again. So a leasing structure for the product, and then within this you could say, okay, perhaps the new product will be 4 times as expensive as the old one, but if you take our service with that, you get it for free. And that's an entire new structure that you can actually get business from your service, which is the main business, because 80% of the revenue for this company is the service, and the product you have to support this service is essential for your own service, but you shouldn't disassemble these 2. So then within this you have a piece of uniqueness and sustainable competitive advantage. And then lastly, Nature's by Design, as already said briefly, and I'll email some contact, is this is the example case of Vacanswinkel and OC, Tau, Engineering, Van der Veer, Philips, and some others are in this consortium. It's about the user friendliness of the tool. As a graduate, I'm adding to the tool, using it in my process together with the company to see how we can communicate and add to this platform and use it as inspiration for the process. So leaving you with a bit of inspiration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. It reminded me of the
Efteling.
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
Holland Huis was. Thank you for having a piece of paper you put in. Here, but here.
Yep.
Okay. Questions? No.
Well, first of all, it's a great project, and as a lot of you probably know, our group has been working with Michiel for many years, and we recommended all the things that you're recommending to them. The issue is the culture of the company. As you know, they just fired 700 people. So that's not an inspirational model. But basically, you're correct that the issue is communication. You could do all kinds of things like you can put messages on the bins that are not necessarily advertising, but that actually generate your business. The key thing about the EcoSmart service, and by the way, Frank Doubelstein is one of the most innovative people at all of Michiel and does a really great job. And the EcoSmart division is growing, so you're in the right place. There's no question about that. The other issue is the personnel. So you put your finger on the right thing, because they have a completely special situation. Can you imagine? They're going into hundreds of offices during the day with their location personnel. They're going into the office during the day, and they're showing people how to throw their stuff away in a way that does good business for Michiel. It's a tremendous business model to use as an innovation platform. So, for example, this person could come in with a little flyer every other Tuesday and say, today you bring in your electronic stuff and we'll collect it and we'll take it back. So this person who is in the office is a marketing gold mine. This is for sure, because normally cleaning companies come in and the interesting thing about these people is they just used one simple method. They speak the local language. A lot of cleaning companies hire people from outside the country that don't speak the language. These guys come in the office during the day and they speak the language so they can communicate with people. And this is really gold. It's marketing gold. And the question is how you can springboard off of that, how you can use it as an innovation platform. So, by the way, they do leasing. They lease the tulip, some of them. They don't just sell them. And that is something to also springboard off of, because it's a possibility. So you're absolutely focused on the two right things. They're both things that our group recommended to Michiel 3 years ago. The communications department came back and said, no, we don't want to communicate, which was rather strange. But I won't say anything more because we've been working with them for quite some time. So the real trick is, and this is a lesson for all the designers in the room, is understanding the corporate culture of the company, which in this case is Michiel, and understanding the realities that someone like Frank Doubelstein has to deal with in terms of making decisions on what budgets they can spend, what amounts of money on. But the focus, you're in the right direction, is the personnel who are working in those offices and the community. And you're also right about the service concept, because you could bring all kinds of other things into it. And I'll just give you one example. Philips, about 2 years ago, held on the National Environment Day in the Netherlands. They an invitation to customers to bring back old electronics, didn't matter, with who. And Philips got 25% of their total annual returns in 3 days. Can you imagine? And the product walked back for free. So imagine what EcoSmart could do with different things like bring back your old running shoes, bring important because then, of course, you want to have other portable bins, but Berg-Hansenwinkel's got a lot of bins. So the more important question is how to inspire people in those offices to bring their stuff from home and use it as a collection point. By the way, in terms of getting people to do things and throw things away, and also in terms of compacting rubbish, there's something called Big Bertha, which is a solar-powered bin, which basically uses solar power to compact the stuff so that it only has to be collected about 5 times less frequently than if you just had the stuff normally in there. And in the case of EcoSmart, because the stuff is all separate from this on-location employee, the compaction would be highly effective in reducing costs for Berg-Hansenwinkel. But then you have to ask them the question, so, are you going to invest in something like that? And see what answer you get.
Okay, thank you.
Koen, you had a question?
Maybe a remark. I think a few years ago I was at civil engineering, and there's a big research there about, well, you probably know about it from the Valorization Center, about recycling of materials and having all of these rest, maybe 90% waste stream, 19% you're talking about at Schiphol, right? That is now rest waste. They are actually extracting from that even the last bits of by shredding it, and then extracting all the separate parts. And they actually also look at it as sort of a gold mine, and actually literally as a gold mine. That was 2 years ago, but they already calculated for Dutch waste that they can get €1 billion in gold out of garbage if they would also take all of the stuff from the landfills and stuff like that. So they actually see really the waste and even the rest waste as that seems to be non-recyclable as really a gold mine, which might be interesting. I'll try and find out who it is exactly, but I think at Civil Engineering, Van Gansewinkel would also be interested to talk to them. And the Valorization Center, I think, already has a few spin-off companies from, so maybe you know better what I'm talking about, but yeah, it's interesting to combine these ideas.
It's interesting. We just had a meeting with the LBE, Leiden Delft and Erasmus initiative for different research opportunities. One of the issues we discussed was, in fact, the how to appreciate the value of the resources. It's not only what is in; it's also how you get it out. So my example always is seawater has some ppt of gold in it. So if you have a cube of 460 meters of seawater, you've got 1 kilogram of gold. But do you have this value in your hands? It is impossible to get it from. Up until last week, I had the same story for microalgae, where there is omega acidic fatties in these microalgae, which are basically made out of CO2 and solar energy, and you can grow very quickly a lot of biomass. And if you can extract this acidic fatties, that would be a gold mine. And now suddenly there seems to be a technology capable of doing it with supercritical CO2. Even there's a Dutch spin-off company from the TU Delft who's doing it.
Exactly. So
it's incredible. So, but so what I would be interested in, and that's what I'm trying to get in this scheme with LBE, is to quantify the value of the waste flows in terms of, let's say, an exegetic approach in terms of materials, and then multiply it with the different technologies that are available in extracting these technologies, gives you an operational value of the value that is indeed in these waste flows. So that would be interesting.
You can make a matrix.
Yeah.
One of the things to take into account is that I know that, for example, over the last 2 years, because I'm graduating on this project, but I've been working with the resource or trash collection for some years now is that over the last years the amount paid for incineration has dropped drastically. So of course it's not an excuse because it's still stupid to burn fossil fuels and it's ending, but the fact that it's a lot cheaper does provide a problem for companies that have an economic point of view most of the time. So a waste stream where 2 years ago I have the number somewhere, but you had to pay an amount now only has to pay half for their rest waste stream. So you get to a point that it's actually more expensive for a company to recycle paper and rest stream instead of just throwing everything and incinerating it. In line with that, it's really depending on the technology, but the technology is actually pushed by the amount paid for the resource itself.
Well, there are of course interactions, but you should not restrict yourself from what is ultimately achievable. That's why I'm interested in this exergetic approach in terms of material flows, because then you have a real number which finally could be the ultimate goal. And that is, in the meantime, it can be cheaper to burn it or whatever. And even in Holland, I mean, we call that sustainable energy, you know. We are the third last country in the EU 27 in terms of sustainable energy, and the majority of it is done by burning our waste. We call it sustainable energy. So that's ridiculous to put your ideas on. We really have to bring it back to basics.
Yeah. In the context of Van Ganzenwinkel, just coming back to that, the important thing is that Van Ganzenwinkel has other divisions. One is PHB and the other is Coolrec. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So the trick inside the company is to get them working together with EcoSmart, because they can handle a lot of correctly, and it pays them. The product comes back to them, and then they can just pick it up in concentrated amounts. So again, what you're looking at is the way of organizing the personnel and what's going on inside the company, rather than redesigning the bins.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's a really interesting field to work in because the way I see it is actually that you're changing an office from a producer of waste to actually a kind of, well, not specifically a gold mine, but a mining company. So you actually create resources and ultimately you could get paid for that, and that is a model that is far more interesting than paying for your waste to get incinerated.
Perhaps that's why EcoSmart is worth a lot more than people think it is.
I have two comments. Well, I want to add to the people who come and inform the workers at the office that, for example, electronic devices can be collected at some day. I know that it's kind of a gold mine and you're destroying your own business case, but I would rather have Van Ganzenwinkel tell me how to fix my. For example, I have a daylight, Philips daylight lamp, and it broke, and the lamp can't be detached from the device itself, so I have to throw it away. And I would rather have Van Ganzenwinkel help me to fix it. It should be, well, there's a website, iFixit, and there's a community on how to fix such things, but you know that there should be an extra step or kind of a service instead of just being into wanting to get as much as waste as possible, trying to extend lifespans of electronics or other devices, instead of aiming for collecting this trash as soon as possible. Because I have
the two products. For example, Van Ganzenwinkel's working with Steelcase, where they had a social work project to put underemployed people back to work. to refurbish furniture. So you can offer that service. It's something that they're already working on, and the two don't compete with each other. But if you bring in your cell phone to be repaired, forget it, because they can't. So you have to identify in your business model which one makes sense to fix and which one makes sense to simply collect and disassemble. It's a very good point that you bring up. Absolutely, I completely agree with it. And it could be a value-added service, and they have the mechanism with which to do that. Again, it has to do with integrating the services within the company.
Yeah. Well, and then of course I know, well, because of a colleague, he fixed his own iPhone by using the manual on iFixit. So that's a nice thing. It's possible, Doug, replacing just some elements in your phone by yourself even. But that was one thing, and the other thing was Bob and I did a study on extending REAP, the REAP methodology of and Van der Dobbelsteen into material collection method, or really actually to estimate the potential of material to be collected in a proper way. You know, see, for example, we had a case study of copper, and one of the things was that you have these residues. So what I understood was that about 95% of copper could be recycled, but then the last 5% still remains in the trash. You know, it's burned, and then of course copper can't be burned, so it will be melted, and it remains in the residues on the bottom of the incinerator. But even these things can be recovered right now, so that's something Van Ganswinkel does as well. We have some numbers on that. And but that's the that's the contradiction between the incinerating. Well, you need some energy to incinerate a pen, for example. You have the ballpoint. There's some copper in it in the tip, so you could extract it, but you need some extra energy to be able to extract it. So it's kind of a dodgy area. Sometimes incineration is useful to get gold or copper or other metals back from the waste stream, but you need some plastics to or
but
other.
for that, if I can add to that, I think Peter's suggestion of the exegetic approach is exactly what we need.
Yeah.
Because then you know what the energy it costs to extract something, and just knowing that already gives you a tool to make the right choices.
Yeah.
Because incinerating can be a tool in reclaiming.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Then it has a double function.
Sure,
Yeah.
like taking back phosphates, for instance, is a big deal. And they found out that in some cases it might be best to burn the sludge and get the phosphates out for the sake of phosphates. I'm talking about, because then they reclaim most.
Yeah.
If they do it at another stage, they reclaim less.
Because by burning it, it's not destroying it,
Exactly.
it's immobilizing it, and then you have to reactivate it in order to get it back. By the way, Dirk, did you know that this company who just went bankrupt, that the phosphate recycling activity is taken over by another company?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good. Who's doing that now?
The CLI, ILC, what is the name?
I don't remember the name of the company. They bought a portion of the operations.
It was positive.
It's a Czech company.
Okay.
Yeah. Czech. Okay. It's better than Kazakhstan. Who were giving the problems in the first instance.
Okay.
Other questions?
No more questions? Thanks a lot, Roald.
Okay.
Are there any other points people would like to make before we close this session? Doc, you've got anything to add?
Douglas?
Yeah, I'm okay. I just wanted to ask, actually, Marleen, if she had anything to add.
I was just thinking of it. I think Bob already sent the link to the chair website to all of the students and visitors of the C2C lab. So that's also where the publication Douglas was referring to in the first place will be added.
Can we ask you to the next Cradle to Cradle Lab session to maybe present this document you're talking about?
You mean the guide where Douglas and Katja are working on? I think that's something I first have to discuss with Douglas because Douglas and Katja, they have developed it, they have written it. So I don't know what you think about that, Doug?
Marleen, you're doing a presentation at Twente University, which I would encourage everyone to attend if it's possible. There's a lot to be learned from what's going on at Twente. And Marleen, you can simply, repeat the Twente presentation at next C2C lab.
Yeah, that would be a possibility. That's on Cradle to Cradle in the built environment in general, but we will highlight these new developments in that presentation.
Okay, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
The thing I comment on is that I was really impressed with the quality today. So it's really good. I'm not saying that the other presentations weren't good, but 3 really high quality presentations.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Well.
The only thing is how to get more students involved.
Well,
in the audience.
One of the good things is that we had 3 today, and they are, or 2 of them are linked to the nature-inspired design. And Bram van der Grint is already very active there, so he would like to bring in more students. So I think that link is quite important. Maybe it's also nice to look at Rotterdam to see what's happening there.
Yeah, we are working on a C2C elective. Sorry, my head is just so full that I didn't know what updates I could tell. But on a C2C elective in Rotterdam, which will start somewhere in April, May next year. So we are writing it right now, and that's it's a free elective, so it's for all RSM students, but also for other universities. So it could also be a possibility to exchange students, and we can also, of course, there during the lectures refer to this. It's just logical connection there, but it's really in the early development phase. We had to write a little web text only and plan the dates for the rooms to be finished. But we have this whole program already in lines, and it's also, of course, what we learned from the Twente master track. We are also integrating this experience.
When do you think it's operational? These electives.
What do you
when would it be operational?
Beginning of May or end of April. It's block 5, and they divided the half year in 3 times.
Okay, can you exchange some information for us that we can point some students of us?
Yeah, of course. It will be placed on the website, I hope today, this description of this elective, and then I will send the link. So, because I heard that it's possible also for TU Delft, but also other university students. It's like what they called in my days a minor, but I don't know, they call it an elective then.
No problem. Yeah. Because Karen Laglas, our dean, also requested us to take some action to try and integrate it more into the educational system.
This lab?
Yes. So
nice.
we can see if there are some possibilities over here, but I'm definitely not ruling out that we do it somewhere else.
No, exactly.
Perhaps 2 interesting things for that. There's a second project at IDE, so you have nature-inspired design. There's a sister project that's also run. It's called Products That Last, so kind of the issue you brought up. I think there are some students there as well, and that is linked to one of the minors that is in industrial design and engineering, which has a focus on sustainability. So if there is a wish for the Cradle to Cradle Lab to take a more prominent role, perhaps there's a link there, and that's run by Connie de Bakker. Connie Bakker.
I did that one.
She was also in the LDA meeting.
Connie Bakker runs the Products That Last, and it's an overlapping, of course, with some of the people working in nature-inspired design, but she's also the course coordinator for the minor.
Within that minor, there's part on Cradle to Cradle. Also, I think Ingrid Pauw does that part.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And that's within several faculties there are speakers. So I know that, for example, from the Ruimtevaartbureau Okkels is participating in that minor and several others.
Yeah, that's also what we intend to do, invite a lot of guest speakers and also an interdepartmental program. So it's not only with closed loop supply chains, which we are connected to less closely, but also with Gail's master.
Gail Whiteman.
Gail Whiteman, yeah. Global business and stakeholder management, her master.
Yeah.
But with most students having an attention span of 5 minutes, I think that it's really important to get this thing online and also get the site populated throughout the university system, throughout RSM, throughout TU Delft, so that people know that there's an online available through the C2C lab, because that's then start to get some more attention. People can drop in and drop out, et cetera, but only if they're aware that the site is available. So in your next step, when you're doing this, making sure that people know that the seminar is taking place is one of the most important things. Otherwise, you might end up with an empty audience. So I would really encourage you to do that. And MIT and Harvard and all of the big universities now are using these online approaches much more to reach much broader audiences. And it's definitely because students just don't have the time or attention span to attend a 3-hour. We have an opportunity to drop in and drop out.
Okay.
Ja. Ja, dus het heeft met kosten. Goed, we moeten dat. Okay, then I'd like to close this session. Thank you very much, all of you.